Here we go. Coming up very shortly, October 23rd to 5th of November at Palace Cinemas in Melbourne, is the 27th Japanese Film Festival. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to one of the programmers of this year's Japanese Film Festival, Manisay Oudomvilay. Manisay, good to talk to you again. Welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Hi, Peter. Good to speaking to you again.
Now, I must ask you first up, as I always like asking about cultural cinemas,
Yeah.
how is Japanese cinema or filmmaking progressing now post-COVID?
I definitely think, yeah, I think it's coming along well, after the COVID era. Um, but yeah, like everywhere else in the world, in Japan, filmmaking kind of took a pause for a bit because, all the restrictions are going on. And a lot of filmmakers either paused production on the movies they were making and they couldn't operate in the same ways they used to. So like things like scenes with large crowds in them weren't a possibility at that time. But now that the corona problem has kind of subsided, I think they're definitely getting back into the swing of things. And you would notice that in the Japanese film industry as well, they're kind of taking new approaches to making films now as well and branching out a bit. So they're definitely much more open to things like streaming films online to be able to reach a larger audience. And they're also, I think, taking more risks and making films that would appeal to, a more global audience.
Ah, okay, interesting to hear. And I gather that hundreds of films are being made again. It's a big industry.
It definitely is. It's a big industry, but here in Australia, we don't tend to hear much about it because, in Japan, most of the films, like 99% of them, are just catered to a Japanese audience. So Australians don't really tend to see them outside of events like the Japanese Film Festival.
Right. Okay. Well, here's a great opportunity to see some Japanese films in the festival. And what were some of the challenges in programming this year in terms of selecting films and getting them right for the Australian audience?
Well, there are always some issue one way or another when it comes to procuring the films for the Japanese film festival. So yeah, every year we always have like a wish list of the films that we would like to include in the program, but for some reason or another, sometimes that doesn't always pan out. Like in some cases, Japanese films will be like premiering elsewhere and they'll become extremely popular and actually get a general release. So that might be a reason that we don't get a film for our festival, or just in terms of the timing, if it's too late in the year for it to show in our program, it doesn't usually make it. And yeah, apart from that, we always try to cater to a range of audiences when it comes to programming the festival. So trying to get that balance of genres right, like with the right amount of action films, drama films, and always an anime and a documentary can be a challenge at times, but it's very rewarding at the same time.
It is, and it shows you how diverse the Japanese filmmakers are in terms of making films in different genres and different approaches. Now, before we talk about the film screening at Palace Kino and Balwyn in Melbourne, there's a special group of screenings at ACMI by filmmaker Ko Nakahira. Tell me about that filmmaker and the films that are screening.
Yeah, so this year, well, we always have a special series of free films happening in Melbourne at ACMI. And basically, it's a series of classic films on 35mm print, and we tend to have a general theme related to it. So this year's free special series is focused on Ko Nakahira, the director, like you mentioned. And yeah, he's not as well known of a name as other Japanese directors of the era, but he was still very influential when it comes to like the global international new wave movement. So yeah, Nakahira was most prominent in the 1950s to 60s and in the post-war period of Japan. So in his films, he was especially noted for kind of pushing the envelope in terms of the themes portrayed and themes related to sex and modernity at the time. So yeah, those films in the program really reflect those changes in the era.
Okay, and they're all screening at ACMI. I agree with you. It's great to have a retrospective of particular filmmakers. So that's excellent. Okay, now let's talk about the program at Palace Kino and Baldwin Cinemas. And I noticed the opening night film has a great title. We're broke, my lord. Can you talk about that film?
Yeah, I definitely can. Just like the name implies, it's a really funny film. It's actually a period comedy, and it's all about the story of this young fisherman who, he's living quite a simple life, and all he has ever wanted is to be like his father and just make the best salted salmon in all of Japan. That's all he ever wanted. But then one day he finds out that he's actually the illegitimate child of a feudal lord, and that then he's suddenly catapulted into nobility and this super lavish lifestyle. But there's a catch, and the reason he's inherited this sudden wealth is because his father had a debt which he's now dumped onto him. So he must come up with a way to be able to pay off this debt. Otherwise, he has to pay for it with his life, basically.
Ah, sounds very fishy to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
very
Indeed.
good. Okay, it sounds very enjoyable as the opening night film. Now, as you mentioned, there's always an anime, and
Yeah.
it's nice to see a film called Gold Kingdom and Water Kingdom.
Yep. So Gold Kingdom and Water Kingdom is the one anime film in our program this year. And it's a super beautifully animated romance anime. And it's basically about two warring kingdoms who decide to basically, agree on one thing, and they will give their most beautiful bride and their smartest man like in an exchange in order to be able to, go into peace. But when the time for the exchange happens, instead a dog and a cat are given instead of the bride and groom. So that causes a kerfuffle. But yeah, by some twist of fate, the bride and the man actually meet by chance. And the story is basically of how they get to know each other and how, the story of the kingdoms pan out. So yeah, this is a very wholesome, very cute romance anime. And yeah, as I mentioned before, it's definitely stunningly animated with a lot of beautiful landscapes. And it's set in a different time period, so it kind of transports you at the same time.
Okay, it's so nice to see anime and such a big industry of some great filmmakers involved in anime. So excellent to hear that. Now, there's a documentary that sounds very appealing called Citizen Kitano.
Yes, so Citizen Cantano is the one documentary that we have in our film lineup. And in Melbourne, actually, we're having a talk event related to that after one of the screenings. So, in case you're unfamiliar, the documentary is basically about the Japanese, TV and film personality Takeshi Tikano, who is also known as Beat Takeshi on Japanese television. So he is basically a super influential comedian, known for pushing the envelope at the time. And he's also a boundary pushing director who has a lot of works to his name. So yeah, he was very known for being a really larger than life figure. And there's kind of two personalities to him. So the documentary basically interviews people that were close to him, and it kind of delves into what he was really like as a person. And there are some appearances from notable famous figures in the documentary as well. So there are like appearances by David Bowie, I think, because they interacted at some point. And yeah, pretty much the documentary is about him and him as a person.
Oh, it sounds terrific. And as a film buff, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And Takeshi Kitano is such an out there sort of filmmaker, especially some of the violence that he puts into his films.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, good one. All right. Now, there's just looking through the films that sort of struck me. There's one that deals with an issue which perhaps filmmakers don't deal with too much in Japan, a film called Nachan's Little Secret.
Yes, so like you mentioned, Natchan's Little Secret, it deals with problems that I guess won't be usually covered in Japanese cinema because it's actually a film that covers LGBTQ plus themes. So the story is about a group of drag queens who basically are mourning the loss of their friend who is a drag queen and the owner of a gay bar in Tokyo. So they decide to come together and basically go on a road trip to attend Natchan's funeral. But there's a twist because despite them doing this, they have no idea what Natchan's real identity is. And she had actually hid her drag queen persona from everyone in her life, including her community, her family, and even her own mother. So the story is basically about the shenanigans that this group of friends gets up to in attending Natchan's funeral. And it's also basically, yeah, it gets quite emotional, but overall it's quite a fun comedy for people to watch.
Okay, and I gather in Japan, a film like this would appeal to a more specialized sort of audience, or is issues with LGBTIQ and all that becoming more mainstream?
Yeah, I think in terms of the Japanese film industry, a film like this is definitely something a bit out of the norm because when it comes to, queer issues and things, Japan does tend to be a little behind when compared to the rest of the world. And in terms of representation as well, the films that come out of the Japanese film industry, um, they're, they're probably not as focused as much on LGBTQI rights. So for something like this to come out now is a really good step in the right direction, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people will see themselves in it as well, which is nice to see.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's good to hear. Now, another title film that looked very appealing to me, Father of the Milky Way Railroad.
Yes, so Father of the Milky Way Railroad is it's basically a biopic, and it's about the poet and author Kenji Miyazawa. And if you're not aware of him, I could probably best describe him as like the Hans Christian Andersen of Japan because he wrote a lot of children's stories, and anyone who grew up in Japan would be familiar with the stories that he wrote. So this film actually features plenty of famous Japanese stars. So people like actors, including what's his name, Suda Masaki, and as well as his name is like slipping my mind at the moment, but he recently appeared in a really famous film and I just can't remember it. But the film, is the story of Japan's most beloved children's author and basically his short life. He lived a very short but fruitful life. And it's also about his relationship with his father, who always believed in him. So, throughout the film, you will see Kenji's life from his birth to his early adolescent years. And you'll see that before he ever became an author, he basically explored a number of different disciplines. But despite his father's disapproval, he always basically stuck behind him. So in that way, it's kind of a really heartwarming drama about like a family's love and how, unconditional a father's love can be. And definitely a few tears were shed with this one. It's very emotional.
Okay, sounds really good. Now, I noticed a couple of fantasy films, Yokapedia and Brave Gunjo Senki.
Yes, so we have a couple of fantasy films on the program. One that I personally really liked is, as you mentioned, called Yokapedia. And this is definitely a film that would be appealing if you're looking to take the whole family for a movie night, because it basically stars kids and it's something that everyone of all ages would enjoy. So the story is about three boys who visit a local shrine to make wishes. And in the middle of the night, they're visited by a little ghost who tells them that if they find a special ghost book, their wishes will be basically granted. So they go searching for this mysterious book, and when they do, they become transported to an alternate universe where monsters are roaming free. So yeah, it's basically a fantasy adventure, and it basically becomes a race against time for these kids to capture the monsters in the ghost book before it's too late and they can't return home. So I really enjoyed this film. It definitely has elements of like, it definitely reminded me of Harry Potter and Pokemon a bit with the fantasy supernatural elements. But in terms of the monsters featured, it also includes Japanese yokai or monster spirits. So if anyone's interested in Japanese folklore in that way, I definitely think it's an interesting movie to watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the other one, Brave,
Yeah, the other one
Gunja.
is
Yeah,
called Brave Gunja Senki.
yeah.
And this is a different kind of fantasy film that's partly set in the past and partly set in the present day. So it's about a high school, an elite sports school that's basically struck by lightning. And when this happens, they get transported back in time. So yeah, they get transported back to the Sengoku period and before the Battle of Okehazama, which is one of the most important battles in samurai history. And yeah, basically they get caught up in this battle, and using the skills and the knowledge they have, they must defeat the bad guys and somehow return to the present. So yeah, this is a supernatural fantasy film, but it also features plenty of action elements. And if you're interested in Japanese martial arts like kendo, kyudo, and karate, it features a lot of scenes with those kind of things. So definitely one for lovers of Japanese culture to watch as well.
Okay, very good, very good. Again, it shows you the diversity and mixture of films in this year's Japanese Film Festival. And as a contrast,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, what about this one, Yudo, The Way of the Bath?
Oh yes, The Way of the Bath. It's definitely been a film that's garnered a lot of interest in our program, and I can definitely see why. So, The Way of the Bath is basically a big love letter to the tradition of the Japanese bathhouse, and it's about two brothers who come to inherit their family's traditional bathhouse, but the two are at odds over what they should do with this bathhouse. So one wants to basically sell it and pack it up, but the other wants to keep the tradition alive. And yeah, the story is about how these two brothers come to agreement about the future of the bathhouse. And it also covers, the film also portrays the eccentric guests that frequent the bathhouse. So you'll find that there are the couple that basically visits it every day, and there are also visitors that there are basically visitors that are super keen on upholding the bathhouse tradition in the correct way and treat it almost like a religion. So there are some very over the top characters featured in this film, and it just makes for a very lighthearted, amusing watch.
Okay, sounds like a lot of fun. And again, as a contrast, there's a mystery I notice in the program, and it's good always to see a mystery called A Man.
Yes, so A Man is also one of the films that I would rate up there on the program. It was definitely one of my favorites. So it's basically a mystery, like you mentioned, and it's about a widow called Rie, whose second husband suddenly passes away in an accident. But when this occurs, she makes the unnerving discovery that the man that she had been, living with and the man that she loved was actually posing under someone else's identity. So she didn't know who he really was at all. So she enlists a lawyer to basically get on the case. And the whole story basically takes them down a rabbit hole as they've come to find out who her husband really was. And it raises questions about, identity and prejudice in Japan. But yeah, it's a very good watch. Even though I would classify this as a mystery drama, it definitely has thrillers definitely has elements that make it seem more thriller-like. So it definitely has you on the edge of your seat, and it's definitely a film that I would recommend like mystery drama lovers to watch.
Okay, okay, sounds good. Now, what would a Japanese film festival be without a bit of horror? And I noticed a couple of horror films in the program, Immersion, and there was another one, The Forbidden Play.
Yes. Yes, we're extremely excited to have these horror films on the program. I think because, some years we don't get to have horror films, but this year we have two, and just in time for Halloween as well. So yeah, the first one, Immersion, is basically about a neuroscience team who um, basically stay at a secluded island, and um, they're researching the connection between VR, virtual reality technology, and neuroscience. So in order to do this, they make a VR duplicate of the island, and um, yeah, they basically make a VR duplicate of the island, and they explore how they can go into the island using this technology. But all of a sudden, violent drowning deaths start to occur on this island, and they soon realize that it's all because of a curse that goes back for centuries. And in order to undo, in order to stop the drowning deaths, the only way is to go back in time and basically undo this curse that has lasted for centuries. So this one, Immersion, is directed by Takashi Shimizu. And if you're aware of The Grudge, he is basically the director and had a big part in the creation of that series. So if you're a horror fan, I would definitely recommend watching this one. I have a few coworkers that are like horror fanatics, and even they were scared by this film. So that's one to watch if you're into the horror genre. Um, the other horror film on the program is called The Forbidden Play, and it's basically about um, a mother and wife called Miyuki, who suddenly passes away in a tragic accident. And after her death, her son decides to bury one of her fingers in the backyard in the hopes of bringing her back to life. So he starts chanting a spell every day. And little does everyone know, while he's doing this, something evil is pulsing underground, and before long, a monster is going to come up to the surface. So yeah, this one, The Forbidden Play, is also directed by a very well-known director, and that is Hideo Nakata, who is best known for like directing The Ring and basically playing a part in the creation of the Ring series. So he has a very big, filmography to his name. And if you're a fan of horror, again, I definitely recommend you watch that one.
Okay, very good, very good. And a drama that looks quite intriguing, a film called The Lines That Define Me.
Yes, so The Lines That Define Me is definitely a really beautiful, really emotional film. So the story is about a young man called Sosuke who has undergone a really tragic loss in his family prior to the film starting. But when he witnesses an ink painting master doing his work one day by chance, he's really emotionally moved, and and upon seeing this, the ink painting master basically invites him to be his student. And throughout the story, it's basic throughout the story, you basically see Sosuke as he comes to learn the art of sumie, or ink painting, as an art form, and you see how he gradually uses the art, and he basically comes to use the art form as a way of expressing his grief and as a way of healing his trauma as well. So yeah, that's a very emotional film that I also teared up. It teared up a bit in a few times, but it's very beautiful, and it has some stunning shots of the ink painting taking place as well throughout.
Okay, okay. And just to round out the films, there's a couple of romantic films. We Made a Beautiful Bouquet, as well as a film called And Yet You Are So Sweet.
Yes, so yeah, there are definitely a few romance films on the program as well. I'll start with We Made a Beautiful Bouquet. And again, this is a very beautiful, very emotional romance type of film, but it's not exactly typical because it doesn't necessarily um, it's not necessarily all happy, and it's actually a very bittersweet, realistic depiction of romance, in my opinion. So the story is about two 22-year-olds called Mugi and Kyunu, who meet by chance when they both miss the last train at midnight in Tokyo. And yeah, they come to embark on a relationship of about 5 years. But considering the time of their lives they're in, which is a very busy period in Japan, especially when you're trying to find work and you're trying to find your place in the world, they face many challenges, including the pressure of maintaining income without compromising their passions, and also, basically how they can maintain their relationship while also dealing with the realities of growing up in Japanese society. So yeah, this is a very beautiful film about the fleeting lifespan of love, and it's definitely one that I think a lot of audiences will have a good cry to. I still recommend it though.
That's fine. And the
Yeah,
other one?
so
Yeah.
the other romance film is called And Yet You Are So Sweet.
Yes.
This is definitely a lot more lighthearted than the film I just talked about, but basically it's a romance film set in a high school in Japan, and it's about a girl called Maya who one day decides to confess her feelings to her crush for the very first time and is completely rejected. So of course she's super heartbroken, and she vows never to confess her love to anyone ever again, only to find out that Shigira, basically the most popular guy in school, has overheard her, and he offers to make a deal with her, and he just suggests that she should pretend to have a crush on him in order to get over her heartbreak. So this is a very lighthearted, fluffy kind of romance high school drama film. It's a very easy watch, very amusing, and very comedic as well. But yeah, that's definitely one I think the younger audiences of the Japanese Film Festival will enjoy.
Okay. Well, I think that covers just about all the films in this year's festival, showing you how diverse the programming has been. Let's talk about the website and booking tickets and so on.
Yes, so basically if you have any information you want to know about the Japanese Film Festival, you can find it on our website, japanesefilmfestival.net. It has all the information about the films and the ticketing links on there as well. And yeah, in order to buy tickets, you just need to head over to that link, and you'll find everything you need. Or you can alternatively go to the box office at Palace Cinemas and order your tickets from there.
Excellent. And that's 23rd of October to the 5th of November at Palace Kino and Baldwin, as well as ACMI Cinemas. Excellent stuff, Manisay. And I will ask you my last question. You probably know what my last question is. Have you seen...
Oh, no.
No, maybe you don't remember. Have you seen anything else apart what's in the festival? Any other films or streaming, anything that has impressed you?
Oh, this is a tough one because I've seen quite a few really impressive films lately. But yeah, I think just moving away from Japanese films, a film that I watched recently that I really loved is called Past Lives. And yeah, it's basically directed by, okay, I think her name's Celine Song. It's her first directorial debut, and it's basically a really beautiful unconventional romance film about the paths in life you take, I guess. And yeah, it's a really deep film that I can't explain. It's one you just have to watch.
Fully agree with you. It's a wonderful American-Korean co-production, and it's a lovely film.
It definitely had me thinking a long time after I watched it.
Yes. No, it's a wonderful film. But we also, apart from recommending Past Lives, we recommend the Japanese Film Festival at Palace Cinemas, of course, and at ACMI. And we've been speaking to one of the programmers at the Japanese Film Festival, Manisay Oudomvilay. Manisay, thank you so much for talking with me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.